So we'll go ahead and get started in about 2 minutes. Hopefully a few more people will check in.
Sounds good. I'm just going to give the very brief pre-meeting speech if that works for you, Lynn.
Okay.
I'm sure most people have heard it, but I see a face or new face or two. Welcome, everyone. If this is your first time joining us, everyone will remain muted throughout the meeting except Lynn and presenters. Following the presentation, Co-Chair Lynn will call on members of the public that wish to speak. You can participate by going to the reactions icon and pressing raise hand and not the wave or thumbs up feature. And only press it once. If you press it a second time, your hand will go back down. If you're calling from the phone, it's *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute. And at that time, be on the lookout for a prompt asking you to confirm unmuting once Lynn calls on you. Please note the chat is for technical support only to help with Zoom software problems and not to ask questions. If you have an older version of Zoom, you'll need to go to the participants section at the bottom of your screen and find the raise hand section there. And finally, don't raise your hand or wave at the screen because we may not be able to see.
Okay, so what I'd like to do is start the meeting with amending the agenda, and it will not be for point number one, it will not be a joint meeting with transportation. Their chair is unable to be here tonight. Number two on my agenda, unfortunately, I received information that REOC would not be able to do their presentation tonight. So we'll remove number two from our agenda. And then as far as the old business, we're adding item D, which is congestion on the island due to visitors. And so can I have a motion to accept the amended agenda? Oh, and I'm sorry, Judy, Judy, where did you want me to put you in the agenda? I'm sorry, I did get your email about
that. You can put me before Kohler or after Kohler is fine.
Okay, so I'll put you as number 5.
Okay, fine.
And then that would make old business number 6. Can I have a motion to accept the amended agenda?
I move.
A second?
Brian Marco.
I see Brian.
Okay, thank you. And so we're going to go ahead with the agenda. And the Roosevelt Island bike lane resurfacing update. So if you could unmute Paul, please. And both Paul and I have been in contact with DOT about this project. Additionally, I've been communicating with specifically Kalos's office on this project. And to date, we have not gotten any information on where they are in the process of costing out the resurfacing. Have you heard anything different than that, Paul?
Nothing to add.
Okay. Okay. So at this point, the update is no news. Now, what I wanted to ask you, Paul, was in terms of next steps, I thought it might be appropriate maybe to officially invite Colleen to visit Roosevelt Island. How do you feel about that? Max, can you unmute Paul again?
Just did, yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think it's a great idea. I've asked her 2 or 3 times to come. I think it'd be great if someone from DOT came just to look at the bridge, because we might have the solution right there on the sidewalk. So if there's some way of making it official and it works, I'm all in favor of it.
Okay, so what I'd like to do is then write a letter coming from the Roosevelt Island Committee, inviting her to visit Roosevelt Island and visit our bridge.
Brilliant.
Any comments on that? You could raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to move on to the next item, which is is on there number 3, but it'll be our number 2, and that's the resurrecting the wire. So I've been contacted by a bunch of different people who really miss that we don't have the paper, the tactile, tangible paper. And I know that there have been a lot of comments in terms of the viability, because there's a lot of places where there are no longer tactile papers available. And so because I've been contacted by so many people, I wanted to put forward a couple of the ideas that I've heard relevant to this and see what other people may have in terms of ideas and suggestions. And so the question that I would like to pose to some of my Upper East Side cohorts is whether or not, or I should say Community Board 8 members, one, whether there is a local tangible, like a paper there, and whether they think that there would be an interest in a paper that highlighted things on the Upper East Side, Roosevelt Island, and Western Queens. Max, could you unmute Barbara, and then I'm going to go to Frank. So if you could unmute
Sure.
Barbara, thank you.
Go ahead, Barbara.
Hi. We have 2 things. Our town is really about the Upper East Side, and they sometimes talk about Roosevelt Island, but that isn't the emphasis. Patch also does talk about Roosevelt Island. I do at least scan Patch and usually read several of its articles. So we do have that. Would I read a specific Roosevelt Island that deals only with Roosevelt Island? I may, because of my position, but I don't think that that would be the common thing. I do think people do read Patch and maybe try to contact them. I'm not saying instead of the wire, but you could be a little bit more proactive in contacting Patch with some of the stories that you want to promote. It is read in
Now that's an online, that's fully online, isn't it, Barbara?
I think so. I think it's fully online.
Okay.
Our town isn't. Our town is both paper and online.
Okay. Oh, is it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That was the other question.
Boxes on the street and things like that, where you could get the paper version.
Okay. Okay. Max, if you could unmute Frank. Yes.
Sure.
Yep. Thank you.
There we go. Okay, thank you. Sorry, my hand was actually up for a while on the prior thing on the. I just have a quick question on the bike lanes on the bridge. I understand that you and Paul have spoken about some road resurfacing there on that, and I understand the problem with that there. It is very slippery and hazardous. I guess at some point those lanes are going to be merged onto one side, most likely the south side. Do they understand that this is something that might only last a couple years in terms of implementation? And says I'm just passing that on to the people who are doing work on this, that you know, it might be a two-way bike lane on the south side.
So I have to say, I honestly haven't heard that as a discussion. Max, could you unmute Paul? And I just want to see if
Sure.
Paul has any input on that.
I just say if it's, I don't remember that from the last REOC presentation about there being a two-way bike lane on the bridge. I know there's obviously a way we've got to think about crossing one side to get across to the new bike ramp. They'll take that into account. I don't know about the other thing. And frankly, even if it's true, this is a very cheap thing to get done. It's not going to cost a fortune. If we have 2 years of safety for people not falling over, and I think it's worth it.
I'm not opposed to it. I just wanted to be clear, okay? And also there is the Western Queens transportation study. So DOT is planning on, or was planning in terms of their plans on moving and joining them. Originally it was on the north side because they thought the bike would go down into the atrium there, but now it's on the south side. So, but if we get 2 years of safety, I'm fine with that. I'm just saying, you know, if it's seen as a 2-year, you know, lifetime or 3-year lifetime, that's totally fine with me. Just noting it. Thank you. Sorry to take you.
I apologize. I didn't see your hand, Frank, so I apologize.
No problem. No problem.
Thank you for that. Can you unmute, Max, can you unmute Marco?
Yeah, I think this is a very technical question, and it's very simple to ask. That's the relation between quality of material and money. And obviously, if the more quality, the more expensive. And if they have the budget, we can go for that. And it's always better to have long-term quality, regardless if it costs more, because at the end of the day, it's cheaper. That is as a contractor, as a developer, that's what usually is my opinion. Now, with respect to the other one about the magazine, and I think we have to encourage to come more newspapers and have a fair competition. And the more competition, the better. So then these magazines, which are free, are good, but it cannot be centralized in one hand. We have to open. This is a free market economy. This is the capitalism. So the more that they can survive, the better. And the public is served better, rather to have one or two. It's better. The more that they have, obviously they have to do a marketing study in order to see if it's possible to do that. It's their money, it's their risk, and let it do it. And I think it's great that somebody want to specialize in Roosevelt Island and either want to cover more topics.
So the history, Marco, hopefully short and sweet, is that we had a local newspaper that went online, and there were some challenges with the organization. It had been run and subsidized for many years by a specific editor who, when he passed away, they were not able to complement the funding that how he had supported the paper. And so one of the proposals that came up was that people saw value in coordinating a paper that was for the Upper East Side, Roosevelt Island, and Western Queens, and that it would give information on those three areas rather than totally be just focused on Roosevelt Island. So this is just some of the ideas and discussions. I've talked to many of the seniors in the community. Really miss having a tangible paper. The parents miss having a paper where the kids' pictures, because of, community events, or, and it doesn't seem that that's been picked up with the online forums. And so it was something that I just wanted to start getting some feedback on, and just kind of some information from, like, would you as an Upper East Sider read articles about Roosevelt Island and Western Queens? One of the things that we see that's been happening is the paper went out of business, or kind of went not out of business, but more online. And before we had the ferry and some of these other built up buildings in Western Queens. So I would imagine that there would be some interest for businesses in Western Queens, Roosevelt Island, to let people on the Upper East Side know what we're doing here and what they're doing. And, so they were talking about resurrecting the wire as the wire that connects Roosevelt Island, Manhattan, Upper East Side, and Western Queens. So let me go to Judy.
Let me
I'm
ask,
sorry.
let me say
Sure.
something. First of all, I don't think we have the authority to control whatever the magazine is doing.
Oh, no. Yeah,
That
no.
is their business, and they can do
No.
whatever they want. If they found that there is a target any other area, this is up to them. But I think the main idea is, if they want to have something from Roosevelt Island specifically, it's great. We have to encourage it. And in any event, business is good. You will create jobs, and that is the bottom line. Whatever they do, it means, unless if they are unfair to publish the information, that will be very bad. But they do in a business, and they risk their money. It's their money, it's their investment. So I think our goal is basically the Roosevelt Island resident will be benefit, especially with the paper, because paper people, especially seniors, they love to read these magazines free. And yes, the youngest population, they prefer to read in the internet, and that's fine too. But the point is, let's go leave the free enterprise run the business, and we support them to report the quality of life, the main issues of the island, so everybody has to be aware what are the problems. And I think with that I ended. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Marco. So I'm going to go to Judy next, Barbara, and then Linda. So if you could unmute Judy, please.
Okay. Well, I was an editor for years for some of the Wire, and can you hear me? Mm-hmm. Okay. And it's really hard to support a newspaper. It was hard to support the Wire, even when it had full advertising and there was no competition. The cost of printing, the cost of publication alone is outrageously high. Plus, Dick had to have a volunteer, Vicky is here, a volunteer force of people to sort 4,000 copies and bag them, because the buildings wouldn't let us just distribute them they had to be put in a bag, and pick them up. And it became a massive, massive effort. And unfortunately, we don't have a lot of advertisers. A few people would advertise from off the island, and it was very hard to collect bills from them. And it just became impossible. Plus, I'm reading the internet every day. I get the news every day. It's very hard now to get a weekly newspaper. I subscribe to the New York Times. Not even 10% of that newspaper is advertising anymore. Even my favorite Tiffany's ad isn't there anymore. There is just so little revenue in advertising, and there's no way to support. You cannot support a paper unless there is a way to put out the RIAC paper has been left at the food distribution on Friday, but RIAC makes no attempt to give out hard copies of their news. And it's really, really sad, because I don't know a way that we could support a paper edition. I know it's very hard on the seniors. I know in the senior center, someone used to bring in the Metro and the other daily paper, and the people loved reading that. But it's really sad in this day and age that I just don't know of a feasible way to make any kind of paper, not even pay for itself, but just get staffing. It always sounds easy. I'll write for the newspaper. You do it 2 or 3 times and you get tired of it, or you don't want to go chase down the stores. A lot of us here have done that. So, it's a hard sell. That's all I can say. It's a really hard sell.
Thanks, Judy. Barbara? Next, if you could unmute Barbara.
Sure, I did.
Okay.
She seems to have been muted again. Here, Barbara, try again.
Okay.
There we go. Yes.
I'm going back on what I said. First of all, Judy, I'm not saying you're wrong, but I will say our town is a paper version. I mean, maybe somebody could find out how they're supporting themselves. And it's a juicy Upper East Side paper with lots of stuff in it. When I first spoke, I thought of it only, I know the Wire was very newsy, Roosevelt Island specifically news. If you would extend it, I will tell you, I love the ferry. And if I could get news of Long Island City, like get off on which restaurants are having something special or is there going to be an event, I would take a ferry there. Same thing with Roosevelt Island. So I may not look at which third grader won a spelling bee. I may not read from Roosevelt Island, but I think that there may be some reason why others would do it. I'm not saying Judy is wrong about the money. I have no idea the business end of it, except we do have our town. And that's something you could maybe check if you pursue it to see how they're doing it.
Okay, thanks, Barbara. Next, if you could unmute Linda. She's on the call.
Sure.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thanks, Linda.
Okay. So I agree with everything that Judy Birdie said about the paper and how difficult it is. I think one of the first things we need to do is ask what Schnepp's Media would provide. In other words, will they supply advertising, salespeople, personnel? Will they do some of the writing? I assume what you have in mind is that Roosevelt Islanders do the reporting, go to meetings, take pictures, etc. But the advertising is the problem, as several people have talked about. Getting enough money from the advertising to support a physical paper and even an online paper is very difficult. So I'm wondering if you know, does Schnepp's Media provide that?
So, Linda, let me give everyone else a little bit more information on what you're speaking about specifically. So what Linda's talking about is there is an entity in Queens that has been buying local New York City and throughout the country, I think, papers, and they would possibly be a group that we could go to have a conversation with them about resurrecting our Wire. And one of the reasons why I wanted to have the conversation tonight was to get a sense of whether it's something that it's a value to go to an entity like Schlepp's, I'm sorry, I'm not getting their name right, and see if they were interested. My understanding is that there's one other entity that does resurrect local papers, but again, I'm not sure what that entails. And so I think those are great questions. And I've learned a lot in just speaking with Linda about how involved papers are and how much goes into making sure that you can have a biweekly paper. And I do know that there are I've had conversations with some people from the community who were deeply involved with the Wire, who really don't see tangible papers as being viable in the future. And one of the points that they made, which I think is a very valid point, is that most newspapers not only made money through their advertising dollars, but that they also made money with their want ads and different types of advertisements that the paper would support. And that's something that has gone mostly online now. And so that's not a viable option for tangible papers anymore. And so the big question is, how do you get the support either from what I'm going to call the physical head count of people who are interested in reading that paper, the tangible paper? Is there possibilities of having some online and some part of a tangible paper? And then is there enough interest with let's say businesses in in Western Queens and Manhattan and Roosevelt Island. And my question was that because we're in an unusual situation with the businesses needing people to start coming to them again, particularly once the pandemic allows us to be able to utilize businesses more, whether or not that may be a factor in our favor with trying to resurrect some element or aspect of the paper. So those are all, you asked a great question, Linda. I don't know that I have the answer to that. I do know that they have an online component. I don't know how their structure works at this point, but that's some things that we would probably want to sit down and work out those questions with them and see whether either they or this other entity that have been resurrecting papers would be would we be a viable market for them?
Can I add to that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, also the Wire had a lot of investigative reporting, not just which kids played soccer and that kind of thing. And they dealt with overseeing government and how it related to Roosevelt Island, REAC, and so forth. And I'm wondering how much journalistic oversight Schneps would have. Would they totally let us report whatever we want to? That's another question. Also, who has the ownership of the paper at this point? Does Jack Resnick still own rights to it? He was the publisher at one point, and I'm not sure if he still owns it. So there's a lot to be considered, is what I'm saying. I think we really need to have a serious conversation with Schneps Media to see what they can provide. And if they can't provide much of anything, I don't know if it's viable, because we tried for a few years after Dick died, and Brianna, the editor, did a wonderful job, but financially it just was very difficult. We couldn't get enough advertising to support it. So I think if we have help from a publication or a company like Schneps, then it might be viable. And I would love to see the Wire resurrection, as most of us would. But I think those things have to be considered.
Absolutely. I definitely agree with that. Did anybody else have anything that they would like to comment as far as the Wire? I'm not seeing any hand raised, so I'm going to move on to the next agenda item. Max, if you could unmute Peter Yearwood.
Sure, there you are, Peter. Go ahead.
Hi, Peter.
Doesn't look like he's unmuted yet. Let's try again.
Okay. Hi. Good evening, everyone.
Thank you for joining us. And I was hoping you could give a brief update on some of the good news you have as far as Kohler goes.
Yeah, I will tell you all this, that we're in a much better place than we were a year ago. As of about 3 days ago, I believe it was only 2 positive patients here at Kohler and 6 staff members. That is one of the challenges that Kohler is facing right now, is getting the staff members on board for vaccination. But as of the last vaccination program that they had here on the 6th, their number went up from 38 to 53%, and it's 88% for the patients, for the residents. And also, some of the good news is that we are now able to leave the facility. Our residents are able to go out and visit their relatives, their friends. They can go into town, go shopping, and that was huge for us, because that was one of the main things that people wanted in here. After being isolated for a year or so, that was huge. So I would say that we're pretty much doing well, a lot better.
Good news, Peter. Good news. Yeah. And I just want to speak on behalf of the Kohler Task Force that I definitely really admire how brave you've been in terms of representing some of the issues that were going on and supporting your other residents and kind of giving us an idea of how we could help. So thank you so much for that. We really
Yeah.
appreciate
I
that.
also want to thank you guys, thank all of you all for all the support that you've given us to the past year, and you all continue to give us. That was huge. Thank you.
Welcome. And Max, if you could unmute Barbara, she has her hand up.
I just want to give a plug for the Health Seniors Committee. And Peter, I'm going to ask your help with this. So we have 2 resolutions that we passed, and it was really because thinking of Kohler that we did it. One of them is a series of reform bills from the state that would, for transparency and so on, for nursing homes that we have urged the governor to pass. And the other one, because not only Kohler, but other places too, when the aides get sick, it affects every single resident. So we passed a resolution in our committee, not in the full board, to say that we would urge the state to pass a bill to say that if you are face-to-face with residents working in long-term care, that you must be inoculated because it's unfair. And I would love it if people come and talk about how difficult it was because the aides got sick, how it affected you directly, that you were quarantined and you couldn't. And if you would like, we would love your support. You could speak, that Lynn could talk to you about how you could speak at the public session and so on.
Max, could you unmute Peter?
Yep.
Thanks. Try again, Peter.
Nope. Let's try one more time. Let's try it once more.
Okay,
There you go.
I'm good. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sure. I would love to do that. I would love to help, and that's another big challenge that we face here too with the staff. Whenever they get sick, if a staff member gets sick in the units are quarantined. But yet the rest of the staff who are in contact with that staff member, they still come to work.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said before, one of the biggest challenges is to get them to take the vaccine. They can't actually force them to do it. But yeah, that's one of the big challenges we're facing here.
Maybe we could say you can't force them to have it. You can force them to have it if they want to work there. Look, places like Cornell University is saying you want to come back to school, you have to be quarantined. A lot of schools are doing that. So it shouldn't be such an unreasonable thing. And bring people, I think that Lynn can tell you some of the rules. I think you could talk for maybe 2 minutes. Max can tell you more. It depends upon how many. But if 2 or 3 people will get up and said this is really important, I think it would help.
Yeah. That's been one of my thoughts from the beginning. I was saying that, okay, you don't want to take the vaccine, fine, but you just can't work here. If you want to work, you can come back after the pandemic is over.
That's what we said.
Yeah.
Jill Eisner was
that was my,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I'm thinking like, fine, maybe you don't care about us, but I can't wrap my head around you not caring about your family, the people your relatives, your family that you go home to every day, knowing the kind of work that you do, you could be infected at any time in here and take it home. Why wouldn't you want to protect your loved ones?
So the way the community board works, we hear an issue at a committee meeting like Roosevelt Island Committee and so on, and we pass resolutions, and then we go to the full board. And once it's at the full board and it's passed, then it will go on to our state senator and our assembly person, and maybe the governor also, and so on. Max could tell more than about exactly the route. And so it would help if you want it passed, if you would help us by speaking out, and Lynn could help you with how to do it, how to sign up and things like that.
Sure. Not a
Look
problem.
forward to seeing you next Wednesday.
Okay.
All right, that's next Wednesday, so I'll talk to you more about it, Peter, and how to do that. So moving the agenda forward, did anybody else have any questions for Kohler? Okay, not seeing none, I'm going to move the agenda forward. Judy, if you could unmute Judy.
Sure. Oh, there you are.
Okay, well, getting back to Kohler, good news is that they're also opening up the visiting, making it much easier to have the indoor visits. It's still sticky. There's still a long list of rules, but it's getting better. And, you know, I know they're working on the leaving the hospital rules because you just can't walk out or, you know, just go out there. There are going to be a lot of rules to that, but I know the administration is working really, really hard. And also the vaccination procedure, the company that comes is now going to come every 3 weeks. They're scheduled to come. So that means any employees will be able to continuously get the shots. You know, if they decide that they want it or they're convinced that they want it and they desperately need it, they will be able to get them at Kohler. They have setting up a constant schedule for anyone who wants the vaccinations.
That's fantastic news, Judy.
Yeah. One thing that I don't understand is why we don't hear from the union, why we haven't heard the hospital workers union tell their staff. I mean, I think it's Local 1199, one of the most powerful unions in the city. I don't hear them telling their members to get vaccinated, which is very, very, very frustrating. I know they can, I don't understand this. No, no one does understand it. And the amount of silly reason, you know, whatever foolish reasons and gossip and stuff, it's still there and it's still everywhere. But I know they're really trying harder, and I'm really happy that now they have over 50% of the staff vaccinated. It's a tough job, but I agree with Peter. I don't want anyone here touching me who hasn't been vaccinated. And
well,
to
I
go
think
up,
that's a great point, Judy, that
I don't want,
the union should be facilitating,
Yes.
encouraging their members to.
I don't know if we have anyone here in our board that's active in the unions, and to find out why they've been mute on this. I mean, it's for their protection and their benefit. And other than that, it's springtime, and hopefully the cherry blossoms will come out. And by the way, we have no subway service to Roosevelt Island this weekend at all. So be prepared.
So it actually, Judy, point 6 old business, we'll talk about that. So,
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to move the agenda forward, and we're going to go to old business. And so I have an update on the status of a community bank. So there's a group of elected officials and REOC who have literally been meeting on a weekly basis to try to resolve that issue. And as of this week, they still have not either found a bank willing to come to Roosevelt Island or been able to get some type of mobile banking here. But what they're telling me is that they are working on that, and that we hope that something will happen soon with that. It's been almost a year, and it's been a very difficult situation for particularly our seniors and disabled. Moving the agenda along, I've got, if you could unmute Sharon, and she's got an update for us on the helicopter task force.
Sure, although I see Tricia actually just put her hand up. So
I'm sorry, Tricia, I didn't see that you had your hand up. If you could go to Tricia first and then to Sharon.
Hey, Lynn, I just had a question about this. So my idea has always, what I brought up in the past with regards to the bank is this idea of a credit union with Cornell Tech. It just seems like the type of community that may benefit from something like this. And from what I understand from Cornell Tech, all of their students, they have an option for a bank, but it's actually based up in Ithaca. So it may be that students may like something that's more local as well. Has anybody actually broached that idea of a credit union?
So my understanding is that Cornell does not have an interest in setting up a physical credit union here. That the students are apparently happy with doing their online business. So And my concern and what's I think frustrating is that there's so many entities and businesses that have gone out of business or have shrunk their presence, that unfortunately banks are one of those institutions that instead of opening branches, what they've been doing is closing branches. So most of the banks that they've been in contact with don't have an interest of opening up a bank in a small community.
Yeah, I guess that's why I thought credit union, since it generally has more community focus and is more nonprofit in structure versus like a bank that like operates a little bit more like a corporation.
Over the years, we've
more
had
sense.
2 different credit unions here on Roosevelt Island.
Yeah.
And both of them did close their branches here. So I think that there's still a huge issue with the head count for a bank here and the dollars that people would put into a bank here. That's
And the other question was about a municipal bank. Do we know how the electeds, I mean, this was the other idea that's been bounced around, I know, but I mean, I think it would take elected support to create a municipal bank for like banking deserts.
I have not been privy to what the weekly discussions have been, but I do know that it's of enough of an interest that they have been having weekly conversations and trying to figure out how to solve this. So,
Okay.
yeah, I don't have an answer to that, but that could be a question that we pose to them.
And I guess just another question, because I see Mark, I see Ben Kalis, Abby here from Kalis's office, and Isabel from Gail's office, and Mike from the comptroller's office. Do any of our elected officials and Rebecca Seawright's office, do we have any idea if this idea of a municipal bank has been bounced around?
Max, could you unmute Isabel?
Hi, everybody. I'm Isabel from President Brewer's office, and I know Abby is here, and Abby has been amazing at following up more than me, probably has been staying on top of this a lot more. And also Corey has him from Assemblywoman Seawright's office. We have been following up. So negotiations continue. And it seems that it might take longer than we wish, but the conversations continue happening. In a recent follow-up, that's the latest. And Abby, you can elaborate more. So there was a point where Abby and I met with a credit union, but the products and services that they offered were so limited that it wasn't even worth it to continue exploring, because there was no promise of anything that was convenient other than bringing a mobile unit pretty much to open accounts, and it was so limited that not worth pursuing. We are still waiting to hear more from Department of Financial Services to see where the conversations are. And I am waiting to hear back from the Board President to see if she could gather more information also. But we are following up. It's not a simple issue. Trish, would you like to send us an email with those suggestions so that we can follow up with our principals, please?
Yeah, I will. Thank you so much, Isabel. I just think that whatever, I mean, it's so much of our ability to leverage Cornell Tech to have them recognize that they could have a lot of potential in this or a lot of impact in this. I think that would be good. But I'll send you an email.
Thank you. And also when we had in couple of months ago when we met with Amalgamated to hear a report of, like the reasons why they left, but also to gather information about like, how many accounts and safe deposits they still have control of or Roosevelt Island residents. So, and basically what they explain is that for a bank to break even, they have to have a minimum of 50 million annual deposits, right? So in deposits. And they gave us a breakdown of how much annually was coming in from small businesses and from personal accounts, right? So that knowing those numbers, having a conversation with Cornell Tech and maybe with other large organizations in the community might be beneficial. So for the community board and for us to think how we can engage other stakeholders in the community.
Can I just ask one more follow-up question to that? I mean, absolutely. And I think you're so right. And that's really helpful information to know. But is it accurate right now that Amalgamated still has open accounts and still has accounts for Roosevelt Island residents?
Yes, they had a number of safety deposit boxes and accounts, and part of the conversation we had with them was how to make sure that communication was happening with those customers, and that they were being offered options to access their assets and to find other places that were more convenient. So we can also circle back and see where that's standing, how many still have.
That would be great. I find that to be really a little alarming, just because as somebody who uses Amalgamated, I've never found them to be very responsive. I generally, if we didn't have if Amalgamated was still on Roosevelt Island, I would have been saying, we should be advocating for better service, because I never found Amalgamated to be great. But the idea of now Islanders having to travel to Midtown, again, without adequate subway service or transportation options to get their banking needs done, or that they just have safety deposit boxes that are inaccessible, is disturbing to me. So would love to I'll send you an email, but would love to kind of think if we're making sure to engage all possible stakeholders in addressing these things as soon as possible.
Thank you.
So Judy, is your question about this issue about Amalgamated?
Yeah, well, first of all, we still keep the Historical Society account there. And today, any cash we get in, I have to go down to 10 East 14th Street to deposit every so often, which is not a pleasant experience, having to go into Manhattan, take the subway to 14th Street for the one branch Amalgamated has. We can still do online banking. But the thing I was thinking of, Amalgamated was in all the underserved neighborhoods. Right across the river on 36th Avenue, they had a branch which was specifically set up to serve the people who lived in the housing projects nearby. They abandoned that branch. Where the people who are banking who live in those areas, I don't know. And they were also up in Co-op City. Okay, Co-op City has a very large population, but Amalgamated, I'll give you 2 seconds of history. When they announced they were closing, they didn't even want to stay open to do any banking except closing safe deposit boxes. And until we found the vice president of the bank and said, we want to be open 1 day a week so we can still do banking, they were just ready to close the safe deposit boxes and walk away on 90 days notice. So to say the least, they were not good neighbors in the end. The only other thing I've looked into is that there are some banks that have banks on wheels, where they come to a community 1 day a week, like the Metro Card bus, comes. And if there's, I don't know if any of the New York City banks do that, but that would also be a solution.
Judy, that's actually a question that we have been posing to this group that have been meeting. So we don't have an answer on that yet. So let me move next on to Linda. If you could unmute Linda, Max.
Hello, yes, hi. I know that several people, when buildings privatized on the island, got their mortgages from Amalgamated. And I'm wondering if we can use that as an incentive to a bank that might consider coming here, that there would be many mortgages placed with them. It's just an idea.
Well, and I think that's a reasonable idea, considering that Westview has finally gotten to the place where they are going to be moving forward with their ownership plan. And so I definitely think that that's a very viable and potential point too. Absolutely.
Good. Okay.
Now, if you could unmute Sharon. So I think Sharon's got a comment, and maybe even
Sure.
we're ready for her report. Thank you.
Yeah, I promised to segue into that, Lynn. Thank you. First of all, I am on the Roosevelt Island Cornell Task Force. And thank you so much, Tricia, for mentioning the possibility of perhaps a credit union bank. I'm going to follow up Lynn's efforts and raise this issue again the next time we have a Cornell task force meeting. And I am well aware that the credit unions that have been on the island subsequently closed for one reason or the other, but they did not have the backing of Cornell Tech and Cornell University. And I see this as something completely viable. And although their students might be perfectly happy with their banking opportunity that they had through Cornell in Ithaca, I don't think it's a stretch for Cornell Tech to throw its weight behind either getting a credit union, which I perceive as something easier to get on the island, or helping to get a bank as well. So I thank you for that suggestion, and I'll make sure that I mention it at the next Roosevelt Island Cornell Task Force meeting, following up Lynn's outreach efforts already. And so my helicopter report, Russell Squire, who is the chairperson of Community Board A, appointed me to represent Community Board A to the task force, to the helicopter task force that is overseen by Gail Brewer's office. Hello, Isabel. So I just want to mention that helicopter noise has been, and we know, a quality of life issue, especially for residents of Brooklyn, Manhattan, as well as Queens. And it does appear that noise complaints related to helicopters is on the rise. Other than noise, there are concerns about congestion as well as pollution. There does seem to be an agreement that that this issue is beyond the purview of just New York City in particular, but also should include a collaboration with New Jersey as well. I want to emphasize that for essential flyovers, and that includes news helicopters, police helicopters, and military helicopters, they're not a part of this discussion, or they're not impacted by anything that we discuss at the Borough President's Helicopter Task Force. So where do we go from here? The main to-do point for us is to support passage of the Helicopter Safety Act. And Lynn, I'll make sure that you get a link to this particular act which is or which has been introduced by council members. Congress members Jerry Nadler, Carolyn Maloney, and Nydia Velasquez. The Helicopter Safety Act is HR 1643. And that act attempts to limit some helicopter flights over Manhattan in general and Roosevelt Island in particular, but of course for the city as a whole. There was also a discussion regarding capping tourist flights and or hours that tourist helicopters fly. And I should mention as well that most of the flights are tourist flights, and I'm sure you've had those discussions in the past on this committee, and recognizing that the really problem helicopters are the tourist helicopters, helicopter flights. So that said, in terms of an update, I think that
now, was the task force going to bring a resolution before the board, or is that something you'd like to do in terms of supporting the Helicopter Safety Act?
Yeah, so the community board is loath to support any act unless they've read it word by word, page by page. Now, Lynn, you know that. and that's why I said that I will make sure we could do this actually at the committee level. In preparing this report for the committee, as you know, as a matter of fact, if Max or if Will, if you're able to locate the report HR 1643, maybe it might be possible to put a link in the chat, and this way committee members will have a chance to read it. And maybe our next meeting, Lynn, we could bring forth, or you could bring forth a resolution from the Roosevelt Island Committee to the full board.
Okay, that sounds like a plan. And thank you, really appreciate that update. I know it's an issue that's been near and dear to you, but it's been one that's constantly been, we keep revisiting it here. And so I appreciate that you've been following up on that for us. Matt,
you,
if you could unmute Judy. I think she had something she wanted to say.
Go ahead, Judy. Oh, not yet.
I lost the
There you
picture. Okay, well, only one question. Is there a task force about seaplanes also? Because, you know, seaplanes are as annoying as helicopters. Is there any action planned, or was any comment on the seaplane situation here, flying very low every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday?
Max, could you unmute Sharon?
Yep.
So there might have been a conversation about that. I will keep my ear to the ground concerning seaplanes. Since I was formally appointed by the community board chair, there has been only one meeting, and I attended that one meeting. So going forward, I'll make sure that I pay attention to any discussion regarding seaplanes, and if I don't hear anything, I'll make sure I bring it up, Judy.
Thank you.
All right, so any other questions or comments about helicopter task force? Seeing none, I'm going to move us along on the agenda to an update on the vaccine pop-up site. So at this point, the vaccine sites are predominantly state-run. Though the island is prepared to set up a site here, there is no immediate or near future site intended on Roosevelt Island. So that's the update on that. We had the opportunity a month or so ago of a pop-up site here. We are ready and able to handle one if it should happen, but at this time there is no plan for one. And then, so moving the agenda forward on the addition of item D, which is congestion on the island with visitors. There have been a recent surge of visitors to Roosevelt Island that has been creating some issues with our transportation hubs. And I've received a lot of comments and complaints about that recently, due to some of the, what I'm going to call holiday staycation things that people have been doing. And there's some serious concerns about the impact for the next week or two on the island because of our beautiful blooming cherry blossoms and the fact that there will be no subway service. And as far as we know, no additional service plan. I believe there's a red bus that will be doing some support that will be coming in and out of Manhattan, but that hasn't been widely advertised. And so there's been some community concern about how the visitors will be impacting, particularly this weekend, congestion issues on the island. So I just wanted to make that's I put that in old business because that's been an ongoing issue for Roosevelt Islanders. So Max, if you could unmute Trisha.
I'm so sorry. My son just threw up all over me, so I'm just going to stop and remove myself. Good night, everybody. Can you mute me?
Okay, Barbara, Max, if you could unmute Barbara.
I was just going to say, I've been watching that little boy and he is so cute. He vomited. That's not so cute. I just want to know, I'm sorry if I'm going to be one of the bad ones, but is the ferry service going to be there? Because I want to see the cherry blossoms.
Yeah, so as far as I know, I don't know what the current schedule is, but there isn't any. So the two modes of transportation this weekend that are available, or three, I should say, is there will be a red bus that will be going to the Roosevelt Island tramway station. I don't know the exact schedule. You can go to the REOC, that they will have that. And then the aerial tram will be running, and then the ferry will be running. And I think it'll be, hopefully if it's a nice, beautiful weekend, it'll be a great time to come over to the island and see the cherry blossoms.
So it's okay if I come.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Judy, you had another comment? If you could unmute Max, if you could unmute Judy.
Well, Barbara, you're more than welcome to come. We don't know if we'll get you home, but you can come. Remember, the ferry is running at 50% capacity. The tram is running at 55 passengers instead of 100 passengers. Now, the MTA is supposedly running buses to Queens Plaza for the E-train. And last weekend was a fiasco because I was at the visitor center and we had thousands of visitors pouring off the tram and out of the subway, just like the 4th of July. And REOC was completely unprepared and then denied that we had thousands of visitors. And there was no extra public safety in the afternoon, no extra police, and no extra bathrooms, no extra porta potties, and very little food services. And I don't know what the community board can do. I don't know what you can do, Lynn. They just do not listen. And I'm really afraid because thousands of people were here last Saturday and the weather forecast is really good for this weekend. And the cherry blossoms don't come out fully until next weekend. So we may have 2 weekends. Oh, and by the way, the ferry will not be running on the 20th, 21st, and maybe the 22nd, which is, I think, midweek, next week.
I think that's midweek.
Yeah. So if you plan on coming here, bring your swim fins. No, it really is a disaster. And RIAC has not publicized the subway not running at all. So, you know, get out your water wings.
So Max, if you could unmute Sharon. Thanks, Judy.
You're welcome.
It's something we'll keep talking about. Sharon.
Let's see.
Oh, so I just wanted to say kudos to Max. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but he did drop a link to the Helicopter Safety Act in the chat. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody did a copy and paste. You can also, if you click on it, it will take you directly to the act. So thank you so much for that.
Sure. And I'm actually putting another one in as we speak.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I'm putting a second link in there as we speak, actually.
Thank you so much, Max. We really appreciate that. So if you could go to Linda.
Go ahead, Linda.
Okay, I just want to go back to something and clarify. This is way back, when I was talking about mortgages to try to incentivize a bank coming here, what I meant was people who have mortgages with Amalgamated, and I have some friends who have that. They want to transfer it because it's been very difficult, as you said, Judy, going to 14th Street and if they have a problem or whatever. So I bet a lot of people have mortgages with Amalgamated because Island House recently, privatized just a few years ago when Amalgamated was here. Maybe some people in River Cross, I don't know. But Lynn, you made a good point that that Westview will be privatizing soon, and they might, want to get mortgages at a local bank. But anyway, I just wanted to clarify that I didn't mean just in general. I meant some people really have mortgages with Amalgamated and would like a local bank to deal with.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. So that, thank you, Linda. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
To know.
Okay.
Absolutely. So does anybody have any new business moving the agenda on?
I'm not seeing any.
I'm not seeing any raised hands either. Could I have a motion to, okay, thank you, Judy. Seconded, Barbara. Okay, guys, thank you so much. Appreciate it. And I'm happy to end it before 8. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us and see you next month. Have a great month.
Have a good night.
Thanks, Max. Appreciate it.